California. The Golden State. Hollywood Hills, Malibu sunsets, Silicon Valley billions, and In-N-Out Burger on every corner. That is the California they sell you in the brochures. But there is another California that the tourism board prays you never Google. 12 cities where residents lock their doors before sunset, where GPS quietly reroutes you the long way around, where meth is literally written into the municipal code, and where the mayor is currently doing federal time. This is not a travel warning. This is the California they built the brochure to hide. Stay with us. It only gets darker from here. Number 12, Susanville. Susanville is a slowly dying town in Lassen County, 3 hours from Sacramento, nestled against the Sierra Nevada mountains. The opening lines of the script set the tone perfectly when they say the welcome sign is the last genuine sight you will see for 40 miles, meaning everything beyond that sign is decayed, abandoned, or dangerous. The town once had 17,500 people listed on its sign, but that number was a deliberate lie built on a practice called prison gerrymandering, where the approximately 7,000 prisoners housed in 2 local prisons were counted as residents to pull in more federal funding. When the California Correctional Center officially closed in June 2023, overnight half the town's jobs vanished with absolutely no replacement plan. The script describes Main Street as having 4 consecutive lease notices in windows that haven't been changed since the Bush administration, meaning businesses have been failing for over 2 decades with nobody new coming in. The nearby timber mill shut in 2003, mining is gone, and the casino is an hour away, leaving only the remaining high desert state prison, which itself keeps making terrible headlines including 2 prison murders in just 8 months during 2024 and 2025. The script's sharpest line about Susanville is that people don't avoid it because of gang violence but because if your truck breaks down on Highway 395 in a January blizzard, nobody will be around to help you. This perfectly captures the town's real danger, which is not crime but total economic collapse and human abandonment. People who remain are doing multiple jobs just to survive, like the locksmith who also appraises property and the snowplow driver who also works as a locksmith, all 3 of them quietly trying to sell their homes and escape. Governor Newsom's plans to close a 5th prison in 2026 means Susanville's neighbors will face the same fate next, and the script ends this segment by saying the community has been running out of time and the silence is only growing louder, which is perhaps the most haunting description of slow municipal death in the entire video. Number 11, Trona. Trona is described in the script as already dead while Susanville is merely dying, which immediately tells you this Mojave desert town has gone far beyond struggling and has entered a state of complete collapse. Located on the shores of Searles Lake in San Bernardino County, Trona was built entirely around one single industry, which was Searles Valley Minerals, a company that extracted potash and borax from the salt flats for 110 years and in doing so built the houses, hired the workers, and essentially ran the entire community. At its peak in the 1960s about 5,000 people lived there, but today that number has fallen somewhere between 1,500 and 2,500 and the script pointedly says nobody is even certain anymore, which tells you how little official attention this place receives. The chemical plant that still operates around the clock produces a sulfur smell so overwhelming that visitors can taste it from miles away on the highway and still find it clinging to their clothing days after leaving, while locals have lived with it so long they simply call it rotten egg as if it were a normal part of life. In July 2019 a 7.1 magnitude earthquake struck nearby Ridgecrest and shattered Trona, splitting houses open and breaking the aqueduct that brought fresh water into the town from outside, and into that broken infrastructure the meth came flooding in. Drug addicts began systematically demolishing abandoned homes and stripping them of every piece of sellable material including copper wire, plumbing pipes, and cabinet hinges. Leaving behind 20-year-old furniture rotting in the desert sun and plywood doors hanging open in the wind. There is no grocery store, no jail, no Chevron station, and the nearest law enforcement facility is 100 miles away in Barstow, meaning a 911 call could result in a 90-minute wait for help. The high school football field is made of dirt because nothing grows in the salt-poisoned soil, and the golf course uses sand painted green to simulate grass. The script's most defining image of Trona is a real road sign displayed at the local museum that reads "End of the World 10 miles, Trona 15 miles, and the locals laugh at it because laughter is the only thing left that costs nothing in a town that has already lost everything else." Number 10, Crescent City. Crescent City sits at the very top of California on Highway 101, 700 miles north of where the state feels like itself, and the script describes it as the point where California ceases to be California, meaning the sunshine, glamour, and opportunity that define the state's image are completely absent here. With only 6,700 residents, the town is surrounded by old-growth redwoods and sits on a foggy Pacific coastline that is genuinely beautiful by any tourism brochure standard, but beneath that natural beauty lies an economy that is approximately 30% dependent on Pelican Bay State Prison, a supermax facility that houses the most dangerous prisoners in the entire California corrections system. The script lists the infamous names that have passed through Pelican Bay, including Charles Manson, gang memoir author Soneika Shakur, and verified leaders of the Black Guerrilla family, the Aryan Brotherhood, and the Mexican Mafia, painting a picture of a facility that is essentially the final destination for California's most unredeemable criminals. Pelican Bay became the center of the largest prison protest in American history in 2011 and again in 2013 when up to 29,000 prisoners across California joined hunger strikes to protest conditions at the facility, which Baffler magazine described as a model of sensory deprivation where inmates spent 23 hours a day in 8 by 10-foot cells, sometimes for decades. The civilian danger in Crescent City is not street crime in the traditional sense but rather the steady accumulation of released prisoners who have nowhere to go after serving their time, creating a population of displaced, traumatized individuals with no resources and no connections beyond the town's single entry and exit road. The 2011 Japanese tsunami sent debris crashing into the harbor and devastated the commercial fishing industry that had provided some economic balance, and today downtown consists of weather-beaten motels, fish and chip shops, and pawn stores that are demographically trending downward. Locals have given the entire surrounding area a nickname, the Redwood Gulag, which combines the haunting imagery of Soviet forced labor camps with the literal redwood forest that surrounds the prison and the town in equal measure, making it one of the most perfectly grim place nicknames in all of California. Number 9, Adelanto. Adelanto's name means advance or progress in Spanish, and the script notes with sharp sarcasm that this is exactly the kind of irony you only notice on the way out, because this high desert city an hour north of San Bernardino has not advanced or progressed in any meaningful direction for years. In 2017, Adelanto became one of the first California cities to fully embrace recreational cannabis retail, and for a brief dazzling moment it seemed to work as property values tripled, empty desert lots got paved, speculators poured in with cash, and cannabis warehouses appeared along Highway 395 like a green industrial miracle rising from the sand. The city projected that cannabis taxes would generate between $1 and $4 million annually against a budget deficit of $4.5 million, which was already a concerning gap, but before that math could even be tested, two catastrophic things happened simultaneously. The first was that illegal cannabis cultivation massively outpaced the legal market, undercutting licensed businesses on price and destroying the legitimate industry before it could establish itself, leaving behind sun-bleached for-lease signs, abandoned cannabis warehouses, and dust storms sweeping through empty industrial parks that just months earlier had seemed like the future. The second was that Mayor Richard Kerr was federally charged in 2021 with accepting more than $57,000 in bribes to fast-track marijuana licensing approvals, and a separate undercover FBI sting caught Councilman Jermaine Wright accepting a $10,000 bribe, meaning the entire local government apparatus was essentially operating as a criminal enterprise. Looming over all of this is the Adelanto ICE Processing Center, a large federal immigration detention facility that the ACLU has described as one of the worst in the nation, with documented hunger strikes, recorded suicides, allegations of lengthy solitary confinement, inadequate medical care, and contaminated water supplies. The city's crime index increased by 105% between 2023 and 2024 according to official city data, which the script emphasizes is not a typo but a literal doubling of crime in a single year. The script closes this segment by saying Adelanto is not avoided because of one specific dangerous spot but because the entire city serves as a warning about what happens when a town bets its survival on a single industry and loses, leaving behind only a federal detention facility and Joshua trees that arrived first and will outlast everyone. Number 8. Clear Lake. Clear Lake sits on the shores of California's largest natural lake 3 hours north of San Francisco, and what makes it uniquely disturbing among all the towns on this list is that its drug crisis is not just acknowledged by locals or documented by journalists but is actually written directly into the official city municipal code by the elected city council itself. Section 5 to 18 of the Clear Lake Municipal Code contains language stating that methamphetamine has emerged as the most common illicit substance in Lake County and the city of Clear Lake, which the script correctly points out is not a Reddit thread or a cynical local's opinion but an official legal document produced by the people voters chose to govern them. The city's legislative response to formally acknowledging that meth is their primary product was to require buyers of pseudoephedrine, a key meth ingredient, to register their ID at the pharmacy counter, and the script delivers the devastating punchline that this solution did essentially nothing as pound-bag meth arrests continued in 2019, 2020. And again in 2025 with the headlines blurring together from sheer repetition. The FBI's Uniform Crime Reporting data shows Clear Lake has 846 violent crimes per 100,000 residents, which is 91% higher than the California average and 128% above the national average, and in a town of only 16,900 people there were 4 murders in 2024 alone. Lake County arrived at this point through a combination of deep poverty, catastrophic wildfires including the 2015 Valley Fire and 2018 Mendocino Complex Fire that displaced hundreds of residents who either never returned or came back only to live in highway encampments, and the complete absence of economic infrastructure that might provide alternatives to the drug trade. The script includes a genuinely disturbing detail that meth users were actually excavating Native American pulmo burial sites and selling the unearthed artifacts for drug money, which captures the total moral and social collapse of the area more powerfully than any crime statistic. The lake itself occasionally produces toxic blue-green algal blooms strong enough to smell from a distance, and TripAdvisor reviews routinely contain phrases like "full of meth heads" and "do not stay overnight," creating a tourism profile so bleak it reads like a public health warning rather than a travel recommendation. Number 7. The Mendota Corridor. The Mendota Corridor is treated differently from every other entry on this list because the script presents it not as a single town but as a cluster of small farming communities scattered across the western San Joaquin Valley along the dusty back roads off Interstate 5 and Highway 99, specifically Mendota, Huron, and Earlymark, each with populations between 6,000 and 12,000 and demographics that are approximately 95% Latino with median household incomes among the lowest anywhere in California. These communities exist in the middle of extraordinary agricultural wealth with tomato fields, almond orchards, and irrigation canals surrounding them on every side producing billions of dollars in food, yet the people who live there see almost none of that prosperity, creating exactly the kind of economic desperation that organized crime exploits with ruthless efficiency. The script is direct about calling this cartel country in the formal federal indictment sense rather than the dramatic Hollywood sense, pointing to a 2018 incident where businesses in Mendota began receiving extortion letters written in Spanish that followed the Northern Triangle Gang playbook word for word, threatening to burn businesses and harm families unless owners paid $100 weekly protection money, with targets including small grocery stores, panaderias, and taquerias run by working families. A 2025 raid by Fresno County authorities uncovered an illegal cartel marijuana grow in Mendota containing over 50,000 plants with an estimated street value of $80 million, and a September 2023 multi-agency bust in Earlymark found 132 pounds of crystal meth, 62,200 fentanyl tablets, 818 marijuana plants, and a fully operational meth conversion laboratory, with 6 members of a single family including a 10-month-old infant killed in a cartel-style execution in nearby Goshen in January 2023. Local police departments in these towns have between 8 and 15 officers covering vast agricultural territories, making the already overstretched county sheriff's office the real law enforcement presence across thousands of square miles. The script delivers its most chilling line about the corridor by saying that people who live there do not drive through it at night because they took the wrong exit, they drive through it because it is their home and they are simply hoping that tonight will not be their night, which captures the grinding daily terror of living inside a cartel operational zone with no resources and no escape. Number 6, Barstow. Barstow is the Mojave Desert city that most people have driven past on the way from Los Angeles to Las Vegas without stopping, and the script notes bluntly that there is a very specific reason for that instinct. Sitting at the intersection of Interstate 15, Interstate 40, Old Route 66, and the BNSF Railway Classification Yard, Barstow exists because trucks and trains need somewhere to stop in the desert, which means the city's entire identity is built around transit and transience rather than community or permanence. The violent crime rate sits at 780 per 100,000 residents, which is 3 times the national average, but the robbery rate is the number that truly stands out because according to Travel Safe Abroad data it is almost 17 times higher than the national average, which the script emphasizes is not a typo but a verified figure that reflects how systematically and frequently people in Barstow are robbed. Operation Consequences, a single law enforcement sweep conducted by the San Bernardino Sheriff's Department on just one street called Maple Street in July 2025, resulted in 23 arrests and the seizure of methamphetamine and ghost weapons, meaning untraceable firearms assembled specifically to avoid law enforcement detection. Downtown Barstow is a graveyard of Route 66 nostalgia with the Astro Motel, the El Rancho, and other once iconic roadside stops now standing dark with neon signs that have not been fully functional since the Eisenhower era, their parking lots cracked and filled with weeds while German tourists on Instagram pilgrimages stop briefly at the famous Baghdad Cafe from the 1987 film, Take their photographs, and leave quickly. The script quotes a self-published comment from a 17-year resident that was left uncorrected on the city's best places page for months, reading that if you are a meth head or cook methamphetamine you could easily call Barstow home, which functions as an accidental but devastatingly accurate city slogan. The Marine Corps Logistics Base, Fort Irwin, and the freight yard provide some economic floor, but the script makes clear that everything else runs on the meth economy, and closes the segment with a stark contrast between the Instagram tourist heading back to Vegas by midnight and the Walmart employee on the third shift walking home alone in the dark, 2 completely different experiences of the exact same city. Number 5, Modesto. Modesto is introduced through the lens of George Lucas, who grew up there and turned his teenage memories of cruising McHenry Avenue into the 1973 film American Graffiti, capturing a nostalgic portrait of innocent 1962 small-town California life that the script says 40 years later feels less like nostalgia and more like the opening of Mad Max, which is a brutal but accurate way of describing how completely a place can transform within a single lifetime. With 218,000 residents in the heart of Stanislaus County, Modesto sits along the Tuolumne River surrounded by almond farms and the headquarters of Gallo Wine, and its famous downtown arch carries the city motto Health, Abundance, Happiness, and Water, which the script returns to at the end of the segment and asks you to stand beneath at midnight and identify which of those 4 things you can actually see. The town became permanently associated with true crime when pregnant Lacey Peterson disappeared from her Modesto home in December 2002 and her husband Scott Peterson was eventually convicted of murdering both her and their unborn child in what became one of the most followed criminal cases in American history. And whether fairly or not, Modesto became the place where Scott Peterson lied to reporters on camera while the search was ongoing. The violent crime rate is 734 per 100,000, which is 47% above the national average, and the murder rate of 7.4 per 100,000 is 12% higher than the national average, with 4-figure aggravated assault totals recorded every year and a 1 in 32 annual chance of becoming a crime victim. Modesto hosts a long-established Hells Angels chapter, ongoing territorial disputes between Norteño and Sereno gangs, and in 2025 saw a disturbing series of violent attacks targeting homeless men sleeping near Yosemite Avenue and Riverside Drive, with one victim beaten with a 2x4. The 2008 foreclosure crisis hit Modesto harder than almost any other American city, with entire subdivisions sitting completely empty for years and the city being named America's worst housing market, and while the tent cities of the Modesto Outdoor Emergency Shelter have been cleared from the 9th Street Bridge, they have simply relocated to Beard Brook Park behind the strip malls, meaning the crisis moved rather than resolved. The Script's closing challenge to stand beneath the health, abundance, happiness, and water arch at midnight and identify which applies is not rhetorical cruelty but an honest invitation to measure the distance between what a city claims to be and what it has actually become. Number 4, Bakersfield. Bakersfield is introduced with genuine cultural respect as the birthplace of the Bakersfield sound, a lean, twangy, working-class style of country music created by Merle Haggard and Buck Owens in the honky-tonks of Oildale, a neighborhood north of the Kern River that the Script then methodically dismantles as one of the most depressing places in California. Oildale has 36,000 residents, a median household income dramatically below the California average, a crime rate of 45.11 per 1,000 residents, a safety grade of D-, and in its southwestern section a 1 in 18 annual chance of becoming a crime victim, which locals have responded to by simply renaming their neighborhood Meth Dale or just the Dale. A black humor acknowledgement that the drug economy has fully replaced whatever legitimate economy once existed there. Reddit comment boards about Oildale routinely describe seeing people locals call fentfolds walking the streets in daylight, which is a street term for individuals so heavily impaired by fentanyl that they are bent completely forward at the waist while standing, which has become so normalized it functions as local color rather than emergency. The morning residential streets feature pump jacks extracting oil from the ground between mobile home parks, and most of the honky-tonks where Merle Haggard's own father used to play piano have been gone for decades, replaced by payday loan storefronts, pawn shops, and 24-hour mini-marts where cashiers work behind bulletproof glass as a standard safety feature rather than a precaution. Bakersfield itself is larger with 410,000 residents but carries a crime rate 85% above the national average and property crime 96% above average, with specific corridors like Cottonwood Road in southeast Bakersfield being areas locals actively avoid after midnight. The most disturbing institutional statistic about Bakersfield's broader Kern County is that according to the Guardian's investigative database, Kern County has recorded the highest officer-involved shooting rate per capita in the United States for multiple years, meaning it is not just criminals but the police themselves who are statistically the most likely to shoot someone. Bakersfield also sits at the southern end of California's fentanyl pipeline with the Sinaloa cartel using Kern County as a major operational hub, generating federal indictments every year, and the Script closes by describing the illuminated Bakersfield arch sign on Select Avenue pointing in the wrong direction, which functions as the perfect metaphor for a city whose identity, mythology, and signage all point somewhere the reality has long since stopped going. Number 3, Salinas. Salinas is introduced through John Steinbeck, who was born there in 1902 and spent his career writing about the Salinas Valley's laborers in works like The Grapes of Wrath, East of Eden, and Of Mice and Men, and the Script notes that what Salinas has become would be completely unrecognizable to the man whose name now adorns the city's museum, conference center, and downtown statue. Located in Monterey County with 163,000 residents, Salinas calls itself the salad bowl of the world because approximately 70% of America's leafy greens are grown within 20 miles of the city center, generating over $1 billion annually in agricultural output, while Pebble Beach with its 8-figure golf membership sits just 40 minutes away, creating one of the most extreme proximity contrasts between wealth and poverty anywhere in California. For years Salinas has been the epicenter of juvenile homicides in the state, being named California's teenage homicide capital 4 times out of 5 between 2011 and 2016 by the Violence Policy Center, with 2015 seeing 40 homicides in a single year, a violent crime rate of 697 per 100,000, and gang-related killings accounting for approximately 85% of all murders. The city is divided between two powerful forces, the Norteño Street Gang allied with the Nuestra Familia prison gang operating out of California's state prison system, and the Sereno Street Gang, with specific locations like Acosta Plaza Apartments and Hebron Heights on the east side serving as historic Norteño strongholds where territorial boundaries are enforced with lethal violence. Operation Knockout in 2010 sent 200 federal and state agents into Salinas in a single coordinated raid and arrested 37 Norteño and Sereno members responsible for at least 36 murders and 200 shootings. And in April 2024 11 members of the Salinas Acosta Plaza's Norteños were federally indicted on racketeering charges covering 8 murders between 2014 and 2023, firebombing, fentanyl trafficking, and witness intimidation. The script includes a devastating quote from Vice magazine where kids in Salinas said they were afraid to wear red or blue because either color could get them mistaken for the wrong gang and shot, and a police chief's office window displays a van with the gang motto "Moments of Pleasure, Years of Pain" painted across the side like a captured battle flag. The segment closes with a quiet, beautiful image of lettuce fields stretching into the Salinas Valley fog at dawn with migrant workers already in the fields at 5 in the morning. Before noting that the Acosta Plaza apartments are quiet by midnight but that in Salinas stillness does not equal safety, which is perhaps the script's most carefully constructed and genuinely literary observation. Number 2, Vallejo. Vallejo is the first city you reach crossing north from the East Bay over the Carquinez Bridge, home to 123,000 people, and a place whose problems operate on two simultaneous and equally disturbing tracks, one being extraordinarily high civilian crime and the other being a police department that investigative journalists have documented as the most lethal per capita in Northern California. The script addresses the police first, noting that Vallejo officers have been involved in 32 shootings over a decade resulting in 18 deaths, and then introduces the badge-bending allegation reported by Open Vallejo, an independent investigative news outlet, which documented that officers allegedly bent the tips of their star badges to mark each person they killed on duty, with photographic evidence showing that the badges were indeed bent. The two most prominent individual cases are Willie McCoy, who was shot 55 times in 3.5 seconds by Vallejo police in February 2019 while asleep in his car at a Taco Bell drive-thru with a gun in his lap, and Sean Monterosa, a 22-year-old shot through the windshield of an unmarked police truck in June 2020 by Officer Jarrett Ton, who fired believing Monterosa's hammer was a gun while the young man was kneeling with his hands in his hoodie pockets, with the key piece of physical evidence, the windshield itself, subsequently destroyed by a city employee. On the civilian crime side, the overall crime rate is 47 per 1,000 residents, the violent crime rate is 740 per 100,000, which is more than double the national average. Murders climbed from 8 in 2018 to 27 in 2020, and by September 2022 the city had recorded 22 homicides in just 9 months, prompting the city council to formally declare a crime emergency. The Vallejo Police Department simultaneously collapsed from 160 officers to 87, with 20 of those on long-term disability leave, leaving roughly 67 active officers to police a city of 123,000 people with approximately 40 active gangs and a Solano County substance abuse hospitalization rate of 312 per 10,000, the highest in the region. The script adds one final historical layer by noting that Vallejo was where the Zodiac Killer claimed his first two known victims in 1969, David Faraday and Betty Lou Jensen, and was also the location of the second verified Zodiac attack, with the case remaining unsolved to this day, making Vallejo a city whose nightmare did not begin with its modern crisis and whose closing image of the Carquinez Bridge at dusk appearing to offer opportunity from one angle and revealing a homicide rate neighborhood from the other is the script's most visually precise metaphor for the gap between California's promise and its reality. Number 1, Stockton. Stockton earns the top position on this list not simply because it is the most statistically dangerous city in California on any given Tuesday, but because it represents the most complete and unrecovered collapse of an American city of its size, and the script is careful to make this distinction by acknowledging that Oakland might occasionally outpace it in danger, Compton might carry more mythology, and San Bernardino had both the largest municipal bankruptcy and a mass terror attack, but Stockton is where the bottom fell out and simply never came back. With 322,000 residents in San Joaquin County, Stockton was once a proud inland port on the Sacramento Delta, an agricultural hub, an immigrant gateway, and the self-declared pride of the Central Valley before the 2008 foreclosure crisis hit it harder than almost any other American city, drowning entire neighborhoods in abandoned properties and leading directly to the city filing for bankruptcy in 2012, becoming the largest American city in history to do so before Detroit later broke that record. The violent crime rate of 1,277 per 100,000 is 229% above the national average. The overall crime rate is 38 per 1,000. The odds of victimization in a given year are 1 in 26. There were 53 homicides in 2024, up from 49 in 2023. And the Stockton Police Department operates at 1.7 officers per 1,000 residents against a California state average of 3.25, meaning the department is running at 52% below average staffing, with service calls regularly going unanswered for hours. The script introduces the Wesley Brownlee case as its defining human story, describing how a serial killer shot and killed 7 people in Stockton parking lots between April 2021 and September 2022, specifically targeting Latino men who were alone in the early morning hours, walking to work or taking out their garbage, operating for 18 months in a city of 300,000 people before Stockton police caught him in October 2022 actively circling a park at night in dark clothing with a loaded weapon, ready to kill an 8th victim. The script notes this is not the plot of a Netflix documentary but simply a Tuesday in Stockton, which is the most efficient summary of normalized urban terror in the entire piece. The city does fight back with programs like Quick Start targeting repeat offenders and the STAR campaign displaying shoplifters on billboards, and crime did drop 11.6% in the first 9 months of 2024, which the script acknowledges as significant, but the structural damage of South Stockton, the French Camp Road corridor, downtown after dark, and the once celebrated Miracle Mile remain visible in every cracked foundation and deserted mid-century block. The closing image of drivers on Interstate 5 seeing the faded "Welcome to Stockton" sign and quietly choosing the longer route captures everything the script has been building toward, not fear of a specific crime but the collective wisdom of everyone who has learned that in Stockton, the bottom is always closer than it looks. 12 cities. 12 different ways a place can fall apart and keep falling. Stockton, Vallejo, Salinas, Bakersfield, Modesto, Barstow, the Mendota Corridor, Clear Lake, Adelanto, Crescent City, Trona, and Susanville. These are not statistics on a spreadsheet. These are real people locking real doors in real towns that the Golden State forgot existed. If this video showed you a California the brochure never will, hit like, hit subscribe, and we will be back tomorrow with another corner of America they do not want you to find. Drive safe. And if you see any of these 12 on your GPS tonight, take the longer route.